I used to believe that betrayal announced itself with thunder-raised voices, suspicious messages, or sudden emotional distance. But when my wife vanished, it happened quietly, like a shadow slipping out of the room while the lights were still on. One morning I woke up, and she simply wasn't there. No note, no explanation, not even the courtesy of taking all her belongings. The silence she left behind felt heavier than any argument we had ever shared. That morning was the beginning of the kind of story you only expect to see in movies, not in your own life. We had spent months planning our future, especially the little home we dreamed of owning together. Every extra hour of work, every skipped vacation, every small sacrifice had gone into a savings account labeled house fund. It was exactly $50,000, the biggest financial milestone of my life. I thought the day we reached that amount would be one of the proudest moments for both of us. I didn't know that the same number would eventually become the sharpest knife in my back. The first clue that something was wrong appeared when I logged into the joint account just to admire what we had built. Except instead of seeing our hard-earned balance, all I saw was a glaring, empty $0 staring back at me. For a moment, I actually thought it was a glitch. I refreshed the page 3 times, waiting for the numbers to reappear. They never did. Panic doesn't describe what I felt. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely afraid. I tried calling her, texting her, doing anything to reach her, but everything went straight to voicemail. At first, I convinced myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe she moved the money temporarily. Maybe she was planning something special. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But the longer the silence stretched, the more impossible those excuses sounded, until hope felt childish. I checked the apartment, expecting her to walk in at any moment, smiling with some elaborate surprise. But instead, I found something else missing: her passport. That's when the realities began to pile on top of each other, forming a truth so ugly that it made my stomach twist. My wife hadn't just taken the money, she had taken it and disappeared. And deep down, some primal part of me already knew this wasn't random, unplanned, or spontaneous. This was deliberate. And deliberate betrayal always has a motive. That motive revealed itself when a mutual friend, who had been avoiding me all day, finally cracked under pressure. She told me my wife had been secretly reconnecting with her ex for months. At first, I refused to believe it because denial is always easier than pain. But then she sent me screenshots, conversations full of flirtation, emotional intimacy, and plans that definitely didn't include me. It felt like someone ripped open my chest and let the cold air settle inside. The more I dug, the darker everything became. Her ex lived outside the country, a detail that suddenly made the missing passport make perfect sense. My wife hadn't just reconnected. She had been planning an escape, and she had funded that escape with my dream, my savings, my trust. It was the kind of betrayal that makes you question your entire sense of judgment. But as shattered as I felt, something inside me hardened. I decided I would not be the pitiful guy left behind, broke, humiliated, and defeated. If she wanted a dramatic exit, then I would write an even more dramatic ending. And it wouldn't involve screaming or begging or falling apart. It would involve strategy. I hired a private investigator, not a dramatic trenchcoat, hat-wearing stereotype, but a calm, extremely competent woman who had seen every flavor of relationship disaster. Her confidence alone made me feel like I had a chance at justice. She dug faster than I expected, uncovering travel plans, airport footage, and messages that confirmed my wife had flown out of the country with her ex. Not for a short trip, not to think things through. She was gone, fully gone, disappeared from our life like it never mattered. But as fate would have it, every runner eventually trips. 2 weeks after she vanished, my investigator sent me an unexpected update. My wife was coming back. Not permanently, not because she missed me, but because of something she privately described as a family emergency. She tried to keep her return quiet, but secrets tend to slip through cracks when you least expect it. And this was the moment I realized Karma was a better writer than I could ever be. The emergency pulled her right back to my city, the same place she had abandoned without remorse. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Her plan had been to start a new luxurious life with my money, and now she was being dragged right back into the world she tried to escape. But I wasn't going to let her leave again with my money or without consequences. I decided to use the opportunity to take everything back legally. My investigator coordinated with the authorities, ensuring every step was clean and documented. When my wife landed at the airport, she wasn't greeted by her ex or by family members. She was greeted by law enforcement officers waiting politely with her name on their list. She looked stunned, almost offended, as if the world owed her a consequence-free life. Watching her get taken aside wasn't joyful, but it was justice. The officers conducted interviews, reviewed evidence, and took statements. What she did wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. She had stolen money that didn't belong to her, withdrawn from an account she had no right to touch in the way she did. The law saw it exactly for what it was, and for the first time, she realized she might actually face real punishment. Suddenly, she wasn't confident, rebellious, or manipulative. She was terrified. Faced with overwhelming proof, she agreed to return every dollar. Not because she felt guilty, but because it was the only way to avoid legal charges that would follow her for the rest of her life. Watching her sign the agreement was like seeing the final act of a play I never wanted to be part of. The same hands that stole from me were now forced to give it all back. And it was poetic in a way I never expected. When she handed over the bank receipts confirming the funds were returned, something unexpected happened. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, no anger, just emptiness. As if the person I once loved had already died long before any of this happened. But Karma wasn't done with her yet. After she settled the financial part, she immediately ran back to her ex, the man she had chosen over our marriage. But life has a cruel sense of humor, because as soon as she admitted she no longer had any money, his attitude changed. The man she thought was her new beginning quickly became her dead end. He refused to be with her. She begged him, argued with him, tried to convince him that love was worth more than money. But he wasn't interested in a broke partner. Their entire relationship had been built on the fantasy of luxury, escape, and starting over with stolen money. And now that the money was gone, the fantasy was gone with it. She was left stranded by the man she betrayed me for. Watching the fallout from afar, I didn't feel joy. The truth is, I mostly felt relief that her choices were no longer my burden. She had made her decisions, and now she was living with them. Alone, broke, and abandoned by the very person she gambled everything on. Over the next few days, life slowly began to feel normal again. I went back to work, made coffee in the mornings, paid my bills, and tried to rediscover who I was before all this. It wasn't easy, but each day felt lighter. There's a strange peace that comes from knowing you survived something meant to destroy you. Betrayal leaves bruises you can't see, but time has a way of turning pain into clarity. What helped me heal wasn't revenge, wasn't her downfall, wasn't getting the money back. It was realizing that I never lost anything worth keeping in the first place. The house fund was just money. I could earn more. But peace, trust, self-respect, those were priceless. And now I had them again. Sometimes people walk into our lives just to teach us how strong we are when they walk out. And sometimes losing someone is the first step in finding yourself. When I looked back on everything that happened, I realized I wasn't the victim. I was the survivor, and that mattered more than the betrayal ever did. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, and eventually the scars became stories rather than wounds. The people close to me offered support I hadn't realized I needed. They reminded me that betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. That someone walking away doesn't diminish your worth. And that closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself. I started focusing on my own happiness again. I took trips I had postponed, invested in hobbies I had forgotten about, and slowly but surely, my future began to feel bright again. I made new friends, strengthened old connections, and found myself smiling at things that used to feel heavy. I built my confidence back not through anger, but through rebuilding. Every step forward felt like reclaiming another part of myself. Eventually, I even created a new house fund, but this time, I kept it in an account with only my name on it. I wasn't rushing into new relationships or trying to prove anything. I was simply living. And living became easier once I stopped replaying old memories. The past no longer held power over me. And as for her, she tried contacting me months later. She asked for a chance to explain, to talk, to apologize. But by then, I realized something important. Closure doesn't always require conversation. Sometimes silence is the strongest boundary you can set. I didn't answer. I didn't block her either. I simply let her messages sit there, unread, gathering digital dust. Because the chapter was already closed, sealed, and archived. And there was nothing she could say that would rewrite the ending. If there's one thing this entire journey taught me, it's this. You can lose money. You can lose trust. You can lose love. But never lose yourself. Healing takes time, but it's possible. Pain fades. Strength grows. And eventually, you look back not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the lessons disguised as heartbreak. So if you're listening to this and going through something similar, remember this. You are stronger than the things meant to break you. You are worth more than the people who walk away from you. And you deserve a future that feels safe, honest, and bright. Sometimes life removes people from your path because you're meant to walk further than they ever could. And trust me, your best chapters are still unwritten.